Hello, everyone. This here is going to be an update slash recap of day 5 of the Diddy case. Let's go. And this here is from Joel's World. And I'm going to be using Joel's World and Nick and Night. But first, it's Joel's World.
Alright, I'm Handsome.
I'm Cody. Was looking for a repairman, North Carolina. Couldn't find one anywhere near us. I'm Jack.
So Albie Shore has said that he has been subpoenaed to testify in the Diddy trial. Now, a lot has been going on in this Diddy trial about who's testifying and who isn't testifying. According to the rumors from big media outlets, they said that Aubrey O'Day was subpoenaed and supposed to testify this Monday, but according to Aubrey, she wasn't going to testify, and it was just a coincidence that she was in New York. Then you have witness number 3, who is allegedly Allie Carter. She was supposed to testify that she was with Diddy. She went to one of his parties, and not only that, she was a minor at the time. That would be a powerful testimony.
Diddy parties. Those are assault parties, and I was one of the kids that was one of the party favors. And a party favors means that you're set on top of the table and you're used as a toy for anybody who comes across the table or who wants to party at a certain time of night when the music stops and then the DJ starts flashing all these lights and they close the doors, and then everybody turns into like a frenzy and starts going into a crazed animal-like demonic state, and you have no idea what's going on. And yes, there was a time where I was just like completely don't give a shit because it happened, and I was the type of kid that thought that, you know, you're in the presence of royalty and they make it seem like you're in the presence of Hollywood, so you should be honored and you should be appreciating that you're there. And I was that person. I totally acted like that. I was like, oh, it's fine, you know, it really doesn't matter. But then it really did matter.
There's cities underground, there's warehouses underground, there's actual homes underground. People build these tunnels, and they've built them for decades. There's a lot of elite celebrities. They go down there for parties. Underneath the Getty Museum in Los Angeles, California. I was there for a cock party. We walked through the museum, through the garden area, and employees led us to underground tunnels. We had to take an elevator and stairs. We had to be led. There is no way that you can just walk into a tunnel. The entrances and the exits are in your face, but there's no way that you can just walk through tunnels. You'll get stuck. You'll go deeper and deeper. You won't be able to come back out because it's hard, because the tunnels run all different directions for miles and miles and miles and miles. So if you go down the wrong one, you'll get stuck, and it's confusing to turn back around and get back to where you're going. So you have to be led in and out. I think people assume that when
A minor, but according to the rumors, she can't be found. The last time she spoke to her attorney, she said she didn't want to testify anymore. So it will be a fresh air if Albie Shore did testify, because we want to start hearing about the charges. And does that mean he has something to say about the charges? Listen to his last interview when he talks about being subpoenaed.
Is Diddy suing you or threatening to sue you?
No.
No?
I have the truth.
But one thing is, you have volunteered to testify at the trial, correct?
Not as of yet. Actually, I was subpoenaed.
Okay.
So my attorneys worked something out. So I believe when the time is right, you know, I'm going to discuss it with my attorneys.
But you're willing to?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, I am. You know, and again, there's no, like I said, this is not marketing for me. I'm living this life. And the only reason I wanted to tell the story, Kurt, was very specifically because I was ignored. There was the most expensive PR campaign against me to shut me down. If you actually knew what they did to me, it was a bounty on my head. There was a bunch of stuff.
So do you think specifically then that Sean Diddy Combs or people affiliated with him did something to you that caused you to have multi-organ failure?
I believe this to be the case, yes. Absolutely.
Wow.
My first time saying it.
Are you concerned that he still has power outside of incarceration?
Remember, I'm the only one who spoke up, and I'm the only one left alive. So this is not about a scared thing, you know. It's just time to reveal the truth. I mean, it is what it is. I went through many, many years of scrutiny and being dragged face first on the concrete, being called delusional and things of that nature. When I said sex trafficking and all the things that I said, because my job was not, listen, I don't want to take down your business if that's what you're doing. Just stay out of my backyard. Stay out of what I'm doing. I'm focused, how did we start this, Kurt, from Mount Vernon, writing love songs, to a case, arguably bigger than OJ.
Now, Albie Shore has never wavered from his story. He always said that it was Diddy that put him in a coma. He said that Diddy was trying to take his life. Now, according to Albie Shore, he was diagnosed with a condition called acute on chronic liver failure. And basically what happened to him is all of his major organs start to shut down at one time. He was in a coma for 2 months, and he also had a liver transplant. And from the moment that he woke up out of his coma, he had to learn how to talk again, walk again. But one thing he was very, very sure about, he said from day one, P. Diddy did this to me. And even though his son Quincy pleaded with him to stop talking about this in public, he did not. And as a result, his relationship with Quincy is fractured till this very day. Now, Gene Deal will go on to somewhat vouch for his story and even try to convince Quincy to keep a relationship with his father.
I'll be sure is my dude. And when we see each other, it seems like no matter how long it is and how long it's been, we've always had love and been cool with each other. I got a lot of respect for Al. I want to say this to you, Quincy, because I know that your mother was protecting you. It was for what Punk would have done to him. Your father ain't never been no sucker. He's a good dude. And your mother was protecting you and him from Puff. Your father was from money earning Mountain Vernon. And he ain't never been no sucker, bro. I go back with Al ever since '89. And I'm letting you know this, brother. That's your pops, which is your father, and he loved you. Make it good with your pops, bro. Make it good with your pops. Because you are a part of him.
How you feel about it personal?
I feel that Cam knew that
Add 4 channels of reliable, clear wireless to your rig with the new Shure SLX D4Q Plus Quad 1.
Cam knew that he wanted to love on his son. And she kept Al away from Quincy because of Puff, and I don't know why. I couldn't tell you why. Other than, for some strange reason, Puff always want to claim something that ain't his. I just think that it's a lot of brainwashing that went on. He brainwashed those kids, and that's what narcissists and people of this caliber do. I feel like Quincy was brainwashed. I feel like Justin and the rest of them. Justin was too. Justin's mother was real strict. Lisa was real strict with Justin. But when he got with Puff, he got brainwashed.
So what would make him do what he did to Albie Shore? If them two was cool, why would he take his girl like that?
It's a power thing. We used to be in situations, I told you, remember me and you had the discussion about, like, he wanted every girl that Pac ever had. You remember that? And his baby mama, Sarah, was a $500 bet. He betted somebody in the studio $500 that he was going to get Sarah within 2 weeks. And she was dating an NBA basketball player, allegedly. And he got her. And he won his 500. But she was Kim's best friend. That's what it is, bro. He didn't care nothing about Al.
Now, another thing that Al B. Sure was right about, people are scared to testify against Diddy. I had no idea that Kim's family was pressuring Kim's father to get her case reopened. At the very least, at the very most, they wanted him to press charges against P. Diddy because they don't believe that Kim passed away from a pneumonia. However, Jake Porter refuses to do it. He says that he feels like something was wrong. He doesn't know what happened. However, he says it'll come out in due time through God's will, but he doesn't want to press charges himself. Now, I really do think it's great that Al B. Sure wants to testify against Diddy. He wants to tell his stories about Kim and what happened to him. But here's another thing that I can't overlook. This case is about P. Diddy. It's a RICO charge. It's an ex-trafficking charge. I'm finding it hard to believe that Al would have anything to say on those subjects, what he is charged for. I mean, you knew about ex-trafficking. You knew about fraud and bribery. You knew about everything. What could he possibly know about when it comes to Diddy's real charges? Or do you know the inside work of how his empire is ran? I'm very, very confused. But listen, I am willing to listen to any and everybody that testifies. I really want, I think that Diddy needs to be put behind bars.
Sure hell do.
Not for life, but long enough for he doesn't hurt anybody else and that he learns some lessons. He needs therapy, if you ask me. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Do you think that Al B. Sure testifying is a good thing? Do you think he'll testify at all? And what do you think about Allie Carter being witness number 3? And if she is witness number 3, where is she? Until next time, bye for now.
Now we're gonna go to Nick at Night.
Like, you get what I'm saying? But you can see how I got irritated. So it wasn't necessarily, I'm one of them type of people to where it's like, I don't be trying to trip or whatever. Like, we all here, we all come to cover the trial and everything like that. But once all them people start coming up and those people started to migrate and cut, you know what I mean? Then it's like, okay, now it's too much going on now. It's too much going on. Like, now it's getting to the point to where it's like, but what the fuck? What the fuck is going on here? No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, so anyways, that's cool. If that's what it is, that's what it is. But yeah, I did get a little irritated about it. But, Then one of the girls who I know he didn't point to this girl. She walked in the line. I said, girl, really? And then she gonna walk around and she gonna look at me and she gonna say, she didn't say, She didn't say nothing, but she gonna look and she gonna go. I said, not you trying to roll your eyes, girl. She was walking, cause you know, like we gotta go through the thing and around and around. So she went around and then like we like, you know, like we passed it, and then she gonna go. I said, not you rolling your eyes, girl. But anyways, other than that, it was cool though. Everybody was cool. You know, it just was that to where, you know, but I didn't know he was paying for multiple spots. So, you know, hey. So I apologize because I was mad. I was a little irritated. But other than that, let's get into the commentary of what happened today. So, as y'all know, I met Don back in the day, and I posted on my community tab a picture of me and Don together, and I got really excited when I heard that she was going to testify. So, when Don was announced that she was next to testify, then Aubrey O'Day was basically playing, see you tomorrow. Aubrey O'Day was basically playing and hinting like she was going to testify too. A lot of people thought that Aubrey was going to testify as well.
She was supposed to testify.
Once I'm like, oh, I got to see Aubrey. I got to see Don. I got to see lights, camera, action. You know, I'm getting excited. I'm like, I'm booking my flight right now. Okay? I'm booking my flight right now because I mainly wanted to see Aubrey in court because I felt like she was going to give it how it needed to be gave and do what needed to be done. So I'm getting excited. I booked my flight because I'm excited to see Don and Aubrey, and then come to find out Aubrey over here pump faking. She over here pump faking like she finna testify, then come to find out she not testifying. Aubrey, girl, you play too much. You play too much. Because, quiet as it's kept, that's really what prompted me to buy my ticket to come out here. And now that I came out here and I done seen Don on the stand, now I feel like Aubrey need to pay me my money back. Because you did all that pump fake and got me excited to come up to this trial to see you do what needed to be done. And then I'm excited to see Don also, but then you to turn around and not testify and talk about, oh, I'm not taking a stand. And Don to get up there and play like she did. Oh, child. Oh, baby. Oh, baby. Houston, we got a problem. But no, so anyways, let's get into it. So Don gets on the stand, and I thought that, like I said, she had so many things that she went over in her lawsuit that I thought that we was going to get into all of those things. But it more so was her backing up Cassie's claim. So she was basically like a support witness to what Cassie went through. You get what I'm saying? And I didn't know like how the government had their case, set up. So I thought that it was gonna be Cassie getting into what she say, her and her freak offs, her and her situation, and then it was gonna get into Don and her saying that, oh, he touched my boobs, or oh, he forced me to do this, oh, I thought it was gonna give that. But it really didn't give that. It really gave, okay, support what you saw with Cassie, okay? And then when she gets on the stand, they done caught her in so many lies that she made herself look not credible at all. Now, do I think that she's seen some things? Do I think that Diddy was definitely hell on wheels. Yes. Do I think that he was giving everybody a little bit of straightening? Yes. However, the way that she was on the stand, and I will give it to her, Nicole Westmoreland was really like coming for her, and like, you better make sure what you said is what you said, and you better be able to repeat it verbatim, and you better know what you claiming. Now, when she got up on that stand, she wasn't acting like she was too sure about what she knew that she was claiming. And Nicole Westmoreland was able to point out, girl, when you went to talk to the prosecutors, you didn't say this then, but now you saying this now, and then you don't remember how you made a statement and then your lawyer said what you said. Her lawyer give a statement. She about
Wow.
a statement from my lawyer. Can you elaborate? What do you mean by a statement? My thing is it buffer for y'all?
Oh Lord, she's skipping. Oh Lord, she's skipping. She's skipping.
She was up there, and I was really, really excited to see Dawn, and she let me down. She was up there acting special. She was acting like she didn't understand. She started talking in baby talk. Y'all said it's glitching.
Yeah, you're glitching, Nick. You're glitching.
Hopefully, hold on, let me see.
We hear you. It's just the audio's great. The visual's just a little
What's going on
little
with this,
slow. I think Meeks froze. Yeah, she froze. Let me see if anybody else has got Diddy updates.
Is it better now that I put it to my phone?
Okay, never mind. She good. Oh, damn, she crystal clear now. Hold on.
I put it to my phone instead of the Wi-Fi. Is that better?
Yeah, and that's better.
Okay. So, yeah, Don has a civil lawsuit as well. So let's get into that, because they basically was like, girl, so what made you want to file a lawsuit, Miss Mamas? Then she over there talking about, once Cassie spoke out, then I got the courage to speak out. So they like, okay, so you got the courage to speak out when Cassie spoke out, but are you, so you looking for compensation? And she was like, compensation, huh? Do you have anything in your lawsuit about compensation?
What is Dawn? Damn, Dawn was acting slow.
You know, then she start acting like she don't understand what the lady is asking her. And I'm thinking, like, I read the lawsuit. I'm like, yes, girl, you claim that he didn't pay your royalties, you didn't pay your wages, you claim you did shows and he didn't pay for them. Like, she wasn't saying none of that. She wasn't saying none of that. She over there acting like like, girl, you didn't read what you, at least brief yourself on what you wrote in your lawsuit before you got on the stand. She over there, compensation, huh? And talking in a baby voice, talking like, when the lady would ask her stuff, she was like, huh? Like talking all low, and it was a mess. A mess. you understand that? Like, Don, be for real. Come on now. Then they had a part where they were talking about how she said Puffy had punched Cassie in the face. So she said that they was at this carnival festival. Oh, you said I'm yelling? I thought I'm talking regular. Child, don't get me excited. I'm over here talking regular. And y'all say I'm yelling. Let me move the mic. Let me move the mic down a little bit and away a little bit, you know. let me move the mic back. I didn't know it was picking up like that. So then, okay, let me get back into it because y'all don't even know. I am running off of 2 hours of sleep, y'all. I did not even get a full 2 hours of sleep since I've been here. Okay?
Nick, I'm sorry, but I just want the meat and potatoes, darling. Ain't nothing against you. I just want the meat and potatoes, darling.
Trafficking trial. No cameras inside of that courtroom, but on the stand this afternoon is Carrie Morgan, a former best friend of Cassie Ventura, who testified all last week. Morgan says she saw Combs assault Cassie Ventura several times, and someone who's been keeping us updated there on the ground is our court TV correspondent, Kelly Craft. Kelly, so glad to have you, especially since we can't see what's going on inside. But what is the latest with Carrie Morgan testifying? Well, hi there, Julia and Ted. So everyone's just making their way back inside the New York City courthouse after a very short lunch break. So people are just making their way in. As soon as court resumes, the direct examination of Carrie Morgan will continue. Carrie Morgan, the former friend of Cassie Ventura, who said that once Sean Diddy Combs assaulted her, their friendship stopped. So what did she say about that particular assault? She said that she was at her house, that Combs had come over demanding that she tell him who Cassie was cheating on him with. He became angry, grabbed her around the neck, and then ended up hitting her with a wooden hanger. Shortly after that, this was about a month after that, her and Cassie met up at a pizzeria. And Cassie, according to her testimony, told her that you're overblowing this because she now had hired an attorney. Carrie Morgan had hired an attorney. Cassie said, you're exaggerating this. She then had her friend sign a non-disclosure agreement and said Sean Combs will be giving you $30,000. So that's some of the testimony that was taking place before the lunch break took place. Now we're making our way back in. We do have some other testimony we can put up for you on the screen. So we're bringing it to you in full screen form because, of course, no cameras are in the courtroom. But she did testify that she had encouraged Ventura to call police. This was after that 2016 hotel altercation at the Intercontinental Hotel in Los Angeles. After the assault, Combs arrived at Ventura's apartment yelling and banging on the door with a hammer. She said, I don't think she cared that he could come in there and kill her. So it's been some really tough testimony to listen to as Carrie has been on the stand recounting these events. She also testified that Combs assaulted her in 2018. So this is the incident I'm talking about with the hanger. He came up behind me, she said. He choked me, then boomeranged a wooden hanger at my head, had finger marks on my neck. And then, as I mentioned, she received a $30,000 check, some money from Combs, and then signed that non-disclosure agreement. So, again, direct examination will continue with Carrie Morgan on the stand as soon as testimony gets back underway. But another situation where we're hearing testimony talking about these alleged incidents of abuse that people had witnessed. Remember Carrie Morgan, when she first got on the stand, talking about how she didn't even want to be here, but she's been subpoenaed, so she has to testify. But she's glad to be away from these people and their problems. Sounds like it's powerful testimony.
Yeah, riveting. Kelly Craft, thank you. Kelly will be with us every hour, around the hour, to give us these updates from court. And as Kelly said, they're just returning from the lunch break with more direct. Let's bring in our guest for the hour from San Francisco, trial attorney Alexis Rosenberg. Alexis, you're in Florida, Sarasota, Florida. Yeah, sorry.
Judge.
What do you think of this building the monster that the federal government is doing? I mean, the images of him at the freak house, the images we saw of him, Sean Combs, dragging Cassie by the elevators, and now this story of him chasing her down at an apartment with a hammer, hammering the door of an apartment. It is right out of a horror film on some levels. What's your take on how the government is doing, keeping in mind this is a racketeering human trafficking case, not an assault case?
Well, with regard to the prosecution with the human trafficking and RICO case, I'm not sure they're doing such a great job. But they are definitely presenting that systematic violence, and that everybody that was in his circle of, being was under this intense threat that appears, based on this testimony, to be continual.
You know what surprises me, Alexis, when I'm listening to Kelly recount what's happening inside the courtroom, and Carrie Morgan was the person who was there with Cassie Ventura after that 2016 video, which so many people think this entire trial is about, the 2016 hotel elevator bank video. And then she urged Cassie to call police at that time, but she didn't want to draw any attention to it. She didn't want the authorities involved or to know who it was. I believe there actually was a 911 call made, but no names were given and no report.
And again, this is court TV.
This could have changed everything, not just for justice for Cassie, but also Sean Diddy Combs may not be facing a RICO trafficking case if this had been dealt with in 2016. Your thoughts on that?
Well, based on the testimony that we've heard, because it is all circulating around that video, but I'm assuming that the prosecution is going to present more information and evidence other than just that video, or they're going to be in real trouble with trying to get a conviction for the charges that he's on trial for. But yeah, I think that the problem was everybody was afraid that he was going to make that go away, which he kind of sort of did. He made the video go away.
Absolutely. It was leaked, but it was after the statute of limitations in California had elapsed, so he doesn't face any repercussions from a criminal standpoint because of that video, but he was successful in keeping it under wraps, at least for a while. And of course now it's a big part of the federal government's case.
We want to head to New York for a live update on the Sean Diddy Combs trial. Always waiting to hear the latest Court TV legal correspondent Kelly Craft. Great to see you. Tell us more about today.
Did you leave before the Well, good afternoon to you, Judge Ashley. Court is over now for the day, an early end to the court day today. It's going to be ending around this time for the remainder of this week due to some scheduling conflicts. But before court ended, Carrie Morgan, she was on the stand. She's the former best friend of Cassie Ventura. When I made my way outside earlier, I was standing in the lobby, and Carrie was standing right there with one of the federal prosecutors. Carrie seemed like she was in very good spirits after her testimony. If you want to analyze her testimony and talk about what they really got from her, the main thing was she was the friend that Cassie went to after that incident at the Intercontinental Hotel. That famous video that we have seen, infamous video we have seen of Sean Combs dragging Cassie across. Well, they were together after that incident, Cassie and her friend Carrie Morgan, and then eventually the police came. Cassie talked about that on the stand, and Carrie talked about that on the stand, and how Cassie did not say anything to the police about exactly what took place after that particular incident. Another thing that we got from Carrie Morgan was about their relationship, about there were good times and there were bad times when she was part of this circle with Sean Combs. Also, that $30,000. So the last time that she saw Cassie Ventura was at a pizzeria. So Sean Combs, according to Carrie Morgan's testimony, assaulted her with a wooden hanger. She grabbed her, he grabbed her around the neck, hit her with a wooden hanger, and then shortly thereafter, about a month later, Cassie Ventura and her met at a pizzeria. Cassie told her that she was overblowing the situation, exaggerating what took place. She then said and asked her her if she would sign a non-disclosure agreement and offered to pay her $30,000 to not talk about this incident. So that was a lot of the testimony from her today. We can also put up some other information from that testimony because, of course, this is federal court, no cameras in the courtroom. So she really was talking about that 2018 assault on Morgan, and the defense attorney suggested the $30,000 that she was given from Ventura. She was really being, asked about that while she was on the stand. Morgan maintained that her understanding was that the money was from Combs, although defense counsel was asking her, well, who gave you the money? Who asked you about the money? And she was saying Ventura. She said that Ventura has not reached out to her since the incident. And defense counsel tried to pick up on that, saying, why haven't you guys talked since? She said, I draw the line at physical violence, and Cassie Ventura was not supportive of me after that incident. So, again, former best friend that was on the stand most of the day. She's originally from Buffalo, New York, but has had quite an interesting life since then, traveling around with Cassie Ventura across the world, talking about hanging out with her in South Africa, as well as Ibiza, Miami, LA. She was really part of the circle with Sean Combs and Cassie for a number of years, but of course no longer speaking. Also, this morning we did hear from another witness who was on the stand. That was Dawn Richard. Her testimony was pretty intense, Judge Ashley. Aggressive cross-examination of her, as the defense counsel pointed out a number of inconsistencies in her testimony. The last witness on the stand today, so only a short amount of time, David James, a personal assistant of Sean Combs, and he's just beginning to get into his testimony, how he worked grueling hours for Sean Combs, and how during his interview to get a job with Sean Combs, he was told during that interview from someone in a human resources department, if you will, that this is Sean Combs' world, this is his kingdom, and we are meant to serve him.
Those words may serve the federal government well during this prosecution. I bet that's going to be repeated in closing arguments. Thank you so much, Kelly Craft, for all your excellent reporting there live in New York. And I want to bring back in criminal defense attorney Jack Rice. Jack, those words, that's what the government has to do. It's not enough to say, here was one victim or two victims that were abused by him and were coerced and forced into doing these things across state lines. They also have to show the racketeering part, and that is that he had a criminal enterprise, that he used all these other people to conduct his criminal activities. How do you think the feds are doing so far?
Very well. They're doing well because they're approaching this like the R. Kelly case. I mean, they really are. This is how we're seeing this. And if you go back and you look at organized crime in the first place, the real strength of it is this, Your Honor, is that when you're talking about an individual defendant, you're essentially saying, what did he do directly? When you're starting to talk about a criminal enterprise, you have the ability to essentially take whatever bad act that was done by anybody else and wrap it around the neck of the defendant themselves. It's an extraordinarily powerful kind of prosecution. And in this particular case, the one thing that the government has, that they really possess, is they possess that one videotape. And everything that they present, you wrap around that and you say, is he capable of this? Just like you saw that he was capable of that. Of course he was. And you're going to see them use that videotape as a superstructure, as a foundation, and they're going to build around it. And frankly, what they're really building is a federal prison.
Yeah. But the defense is very aggressive, very seasoned, very good. Hearing that they're, for instance, destroying cross-examination inconsistencies in one of the witnesses' stories. Are they going to be able to raise some reasonable doubt? They might. We'll have to wait and see what the jury does, of course, with the daily updates.
Explosive testimony.
And here we go with Law and Crime.
Sex trafficking and racketeering trial against Sean Diddy Combs. More allegations of abuse of Cassandra Ventura, choking, money to stay silent, and even a former employee testifying to the inner workings of Sean Combs' world. I'm going to be speaking with our Law and Crime reporter Elizabeth Milner to break down all of today's dramatic courtroom moments. Well, the Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Hey everybody, this is another Law and Crime legal alert. If you received Depo-Provera birth control shots and were later diagnosed with a brain or spinal tumor called meningioma, you may be eligible for a lawsuit. That's right, Morgan & Morgan is investigating claims that patients weren't properly warned about this risk. It's free to check, just takes a few minutes, and you don't pay unless they win. So scan the QR code on screen, click the link below, or head over to forthepeople.com/LCDepot to see if you qualify. Well, the federal sex trafficking and racketeering trial of Sean Diddy Combs took a dramatic turn as we enter week number 2. Two key witnesses delivered explosive testimony detailing allegations of violence, threats, manipulation at the hands of the hip-hop mogul. Former Daddy Kane member Dawn Richard returned to the stand, doubling down on her shocking claim that she witnessed Diddy attack his then-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura Fine. The jury also heard from Carrie Morgan. This is Cassie's former best friend who described multiple incidents in which she claims to have seen Diddy physically assault Cassie. And interestingly, Morgan testified that she and Cassie no longer friends. We're going to explain the surprising reason why in just a moment. But we also heard from Combs' former personal assistant, too, toward the end of the day. And let's not forget what we're talking about here. So Diddy is facing serious federal charges: racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, transportation to engage in prostitution, namely that he allegedly operated this criminal enterprise that was engaged in a pattern of abusing women for years, including forcing them into these coerced sexual performances. He's facing potentially life in prison if he's convicted of the top charge. Now, for all the dramatic moments from inside the courtroom and maybe what happened outside the courtroom, I want to bring in our eyes, our ears, law and crime reporter Elizabeth Milner, because as we know, there are no cameras in that courtroom. There's no audio recording in that courtroom, but we have Elizabeth Milner. Who else would you want to report for us than Elizabeth Milner? Elizabeth, so good to see you. Thank you so much for taking the time. So, look, today's testimony, some pretty shocking details, and we're going to get to that in a minute. But first, I always have to ask you, what was the atmosphere like today? What was Sean Combs' demeanor like today? And we'll get into a little bit more of the jury and how they were reacting to each of the testimony. But what was the atmosphere like? What was the scene like? What was Sean Combs like?
Well, the atmosphere has always been how it has been this entire time. A lot of interest, just genuinely, in this case overall, and not just from us in the media, a lot of people from the public too. I get here around like 7 o'clock, between 7 o'clock and 7:30 every morning, and for the most part, there's already a pretty long line of not just, again, reporters, but people from the public who just want to get a glimpse of kind of what is all going on, especially given that there are no cameras for this trial. So a lot of people want to either get inside that courtroom or at least kind of watch it kind of similarly to a movie theater show downstairs in the overflow room, where I've heard there's been like a lot of commotion as far as just people who kind of like to be chatty during this. A lot of people are just kind of oohing and awing just at the testimony, kind of similar to how people might react during like a sports game or a basketball game, that type of thing. So yeah, there's a lot of interest in this case overall. A lot of people just want to either get inside that courtroom, get inside just to see Diddy, possibly his family. But as far as inside the actual courtroom today where I was, it was kind of the same as usual. It looked a little different as far as, you know, the defendant's side, just kind of what that all looked like. What we do know is that one of Diddy's childhood friends was still in that courtroom, but as far as just his extended family or just his mother, his daughters, his sons, that wasn't what we saw today in this courtroom. And I had mentioned on Friday, you know, a source had told me that the girls, the twins, had prom over the weekend, which we saw some photos of them. So it might just be that a lot of the family just went back to see these activities and that type of thing, but it really didn't deter Diddy at all. Diddy still was laser focused on what was going on in his trial. The more I go to these court hearings and go to trial every single day, I'm starting to kind of realize that Diddy, even though he's in the predicament that he's in right now, and that's he's still behind bars, he's still kind of running the show, maybe possibly similarly to how he was running his business. He is very much not a passive defendant. He's not one of those defendants who's just sitting there letting his lawyers handle everything. In some aspects, he might be right, because they know the law, they know all of that stuff. But as far as just him participating in his own defense, he definitely is still doing that. He's still jotting down notes, passing them off to his attorneys. He's still just being focused on the trial, the testimony that's being given. He's focused on what his attorneys are asking. And I've seen a couple peeks here and there as far as just the jury's reaction to everything. So as far as tone overall in the courtroom, it's still business as usual. Obviously, from Sean Combs' perspective, this is kind of the fight for his life as he's trying to, probably on his end, probably just wants all these charges dismissed or at least to be acquitted of these charges. But for the most part, the tone is very much business as usual. A lot of us were expecting what would the cross-examination of Don Richard look like, and that was kind of what, in essence, it was definitely this morning.
Yeah, even the sketch artist that's in the court, and we always get the updated sketches from every day, depicted Sean Combs taking notes during Don Richard's testimony. So let's talk about Don Richard. This is the former member of the group Diddy Kane, created by Sean Combs, signed to his Bad Boy record label. She filed her own lawsuit against Sean Combs. She was back in the stand. She began her testimony on Friday. We heard more about her allegedly observing this abuse that she inflicted that he allegedly inflicted on Cassandra Ventura. What did she say more about this alleged abuse that she observed?
Yeah, so on Friday when we left testimony, Don Richard was still under direct, so they kind of picked back up from direct this morning. And pretty much what she left on Friday was that she was talking about this incident involving an egg skillet, something that's kind of been deemed the egg skillet incident as far as court goes today. And it was a situation where she had witnessed Diddy being physically assault his then girlfriend, of course, that being Cassie Ventura, and said at the day after this incident had happened that they were in the recording studio downstairs at Diddy's home, and essentially Diddy brought Don Richard and her then bandmate Kalina Harper some flowers, and essentially said something along the lines of, "Don't say anything because where I'm from, people go missing." So when we left off on Friday, Mark Agnifilo was just like, hold up, objection. That objection actually ended up being overruled. So we kind of picked up from where that was. And so today, Don Richard was pretty much kind of picking back up for the aftermath of this egg skillet incident where Diddy had said that this relationship was something of passion with him and Cassie, and that if they were to say anything, they being Don Richard and Kalina Harper allegedly, that people go missing. And so Don said that she was actually scared and shocked by this statement, and she said even after the aftermath of this incident that she continued seeing Cassie and Diddy together. They were seen together at hotels, in the studio, at their homes, and she says that Dawn says that she saw Cassie pretty frequently, and she also said that she saw Diddy be violent with Cassie very frequently. She says Dawn saw Diddy punch and drag and even instances of kicking Cassie, and she was asked what prompted this violence. Dawn, because while she was on the stand, she's very soft-spoken. She seemed a little bit nervous just overall about testifying today, and so she was very soft-spoken when she was saying these words, and she said that this violence would be prompted just at random. She said Cassie would just be speaking up for herself, and then something like this would happen. Dawn said that Cassie has a very quiet demeanor, something that I kind of had witnessed when she was testifying today, and that Diddy just wasn't having that as far as her pretty much essentially speaking up for herself. And then there was other instances where she was asked, who was all there when you witnessed Diddy being physically violent with Cassie, and she mentioned names such as Harv Pierre, who is the former president of Bad Boy. She mentioned Mia, who had worked for Diddy. She mentioned Capricorn Clark, also a former employee of Diddy. She also mentioned D-Rock and Bonds. These are two individuals who we know work security for Diddy. We've seen a couple of exhibit photos of them, and they're just kind of like their driver's license photos, nothing crazy like group shots or anything just like that yet. And so then she was asked what was the first incident of violence that you had seen by Diddy, and she said that 2009 was the first incident she saw this. And so then that's when we start to see the exhibit photos again, that those being of D-Rock, those being of Bonds. And she said that this violence kind of continued while Don Richard worked with Diddy and Dirty Money. And so the defense was kind of trying to point out the differences between her time with Danity Kane, her time with Dirty Money, and we'll get to that when we kind of talk about the cross. But as far as her time working with Dirty Money, she had said that was from the period of 2009 to 2011, so about a 2-year period. She said when she was asked if Bonds or D-Rock did anything after this violence, and she said that they essentially didn't do anything to kind of help Cassie. She said she, being Dawn, saw injuries to Cassie's eyes, her legs, her arms. She said essentially that Cassie would cover up her injuries with makeup, something that Cassie herself testified to while she was on the stand. She mentioned another incident, and this was an incident over up in Central Park, just, blocks and blocks up from here, where she witnessed Diddy punch Cassie in the face with a closed fist at this festival at Central Park where Dirty Money was going to be performing. She said after this incident that Cassie came into the bathroom, she was crying while Dawn and Kalina Harper, who was, again, her then bandmate on Dirty Money, were getting ready for a performance. And Dawn says that she saw Cassie's eyes swelling, and she being Cassie, just put on some makeup and then put on her sunglasses. And Dawn said that she'd stayed with Cassie for support after this incident. Then we see an exhibit photo of Cassie, Dawn, and Kalina Harper all at this festival, all up in Central Park. All of the women were with their sunglasses, but this picture was a little different than some of the other exhibit photos that Cassie herself has turned over to the government, where we couldn't necessarily see the injuries under her sunglasses because it was kind of just like a group photo. Other people were around, but you could tell that Kalina, Cassie, and Dawn Richard were all wearing sunglasses. And she was asked, why are you guys all wearing sunglasses? And Dawn responded, it was in solidarity of Cassie, essentially. Then there was another incident the following year in 2010 that Dawn Richard had witnessed, where she saw Diddy punch Cassie in the stomach. This was at a dinner that they were all having together. Celebrities were there. She had mentioned Usher was there and Nia was there, but she had also mentioned, again, a lot of Diddy's employees themselves, such as Har Pierre, again, president of Bad Boy. You had D-Rock there, who worked security. Kalina Harper there, a part of Dirty Money. Nia there, she worked for security, she worked with Diddy. And then Bonds, who was part of security, were all there. Then we see an exhibit photo of Har Pierre, again, him being president of Bad Boy. And she was asked a little bit about Har Pierre's role and whether or not Har Pierre was her boss, but she had clarified that she had reported to Sean Combs, even though Har Pierre was the president of Bad Boy at the time. And then she said nobody intervened during this situation. So as they're all driving back, they were on a Sprinter van. On the Sprinter van were Kalina, Dawn, Cassie, Diddy, and D-Rock. D-Rock was the one who was driving, and that Cassie actually confronted Diddy about punching her in the stomach, essentially saying that it was embarrassing that he had did this in front of other people. And Dawn Richard recalled Diddy slapping Cassie in the mouth, and that Cassie just looked out of the window for the rest of the ride. Dawn Richard was asked specifically questions about Cassie's career, as far as that Cassie just wanted to do more in career, says that Dawn supported this, and that she even offered to write songs for Cassie during this, but that Diddy just didn't like that Kalina Harper and Dawn Richard were essentially talking to Cassie. Diddy had told Cassie when Diddy's ready, then that's when they could work on Cassie's career. And so I could see where the prosecution was kind of going with this, as far as asking Dawn Richard these types of questions, kind of painting the picture that Cassie had no other choice but to continue on living this type of life, knowing that her career was kind of in the hands of Diddy. So I could see kind of where they were going with this. But Dawn Richard recalled one specific moment where Diddy told her that he didn't like that Kalina and Dawn were speaking to Cassie. He said something along the lines of, stay the F out of my relationship, you mother effers don't know real work. And so Dawn had said just kind of how Diddy was just so kind of mean to them when speaking with them. She was asked about Diddy's drug use and whether or not she saw or witnessed Diddy doing drugs. She says she has, including drugs like weed, ketamine, coke, Molly, ecstasy, and said that a lot of these drugs were brought often to the studio or even at Diddy's house. And she said that these drugs were actually delivered by a man named One Stop. We all saw an exhibit photo of this man named One Stop, because at first when I was jotting down my notes, I was like, what is it? But that was actually, I guess, his moniker, One Stop. And that One Stop was kind of a play on that you're one stop away, you can get the drugs, that type of thing. So it was a little funny kind of knowing that nickname behind it. But Dawn Richard had talked about how One Stop had delivered coke, Plan B, weed, Molly, essentially everything to Diddy at the studio. And Dawn had said that she saw Diddy put drugs in his Louis Vuitton pouch, something that other people have testified to, something that when the HSI agent had testified on Friday that we had seen inside Diddy's room when he was arrested, and said that, Dawn said that Diddy would carry drugs in this Louis Vuitton pouch, and he would carry these drugs domestically and internationally. She was asked, did you observe Diddy give drugs to Kalina and possibly Cassie too, and she said that she did. She was asked about weapons, whether or not Diddy had weapons on him while he was in the studio. She said she did see Diddy with a handgun in the studio around the 2009-2010 time frame. He normally would carry this handgun in his lower waist or even his back. He would even carry this gun to the club as well too, but D-Rock and Bonds also carried guns for Diddy because they were security. So then towards the end of her testimony, she was asked a little bit about why she parted ways with Diddy, and said that she continued to even stay in contact with Diddy after parting ways. Dawn said that if she didn't pick up the phone, the phone situation, that he would just call and call and call, and if no one was answering, then he'd get assistants to call. Dawn said she experienced that for herself, where she said that his assistants and management would call her if she wasn't answering Diddy's calls himself. She says that she stayed pleasant, and this is something that I thought was interesting, Jesse, mainly because, for the longest time, myself would just think that as far as Diddy's relationship with Don Richard specifically, that it was a special one, because I was a huge fan of the band back when I was younger, and I just remember Diddy specifically kind of having his eyes on Dawn just as she would be the superstar. He kind of propped her up and propelled her up, and so we all thought that, they had a great relationship. So even it was surprising when Dawn had filed her lawsuit against Diddy a few months back, and even her talking about it under testimony today, she said that she stayed pleasant with Diddy essentially because she was scared of him, and said that she just wanted to exchange pleasantries, even referred to him as bro, something that I think she doesn't necessarily mean, but just said it because I think she just wanted to continue to maintain that relationship in a professional way, but still witnessing all of this. So I thought that was an interesting moment that she had talked about today. She said that she didn't disclose the violence because she was told not to disclose this by Diddy and as well as even Har Pierre. But she said everything kind of changed for her when Cassie took a stand and told her truth and that was Cassie filing her lawsuit. Obviously, everything kind of happened afterwards, and then she said that she, being Dawn, referred to her lawsuit specifically as something that referred to herself, as far as just all the allegations that she put in, because a lot of the allegations she put in her civil claim just weren't necessarily talked about during her testimony today, especially under direct. But she says that this lawsuit is still pending, and she says she's not aware of any type of settlement in the case so far. She said that she wasn't expecting compensation, which is interesting because under cross-examination, she said she was expecting compensation as far as the time that she had worked, but under direct, she said she wasn't expecting compensation, but she was essentially just expecting justice. Her direct testimony. So they've touched upon a lot of key points, I think, to kind of help solidify Cassie's claims, but when I tell you the cross-examination was a cross-examination watch. It definitely was.
So I was taking notes of what you were saying, and a couple things here. Yes, so she filed her own lawsuit, if I remember correctly, accusing Diddy of groping her, imprisoning her, threatening her life. I think when she tried to intervene, you're right, there were aspects of it that weren't a part of her direct examination. By the way, when we did the lunchtime show on Law and Crimes YouTube, I remember at least one of the questions we got from our viewers was, how come this wasn't brought up? How come this wasn't brought up? And it seemed it was very specific. So for me, from a legal point of view, I think she did a couple of things, right? So obviously she corroborated Cassandra Ventura Fine's account that she was physically abused, but that is doubled down by the video, the 2016 video, the photographs of Cassandra Ventura Fine's alleged injuries, other witness testimony, her testimony that she was physically abused. But I think what she also did very well, or at least I think what the prosecution was trying to assert, why she didn't come forward. Why didn't she speak out? Why didn't she confront Diddy? Though that is very consistent with why Cassandra Ventura arguably didn't leave the relationship or go to the authorities or speak out. The power, the influence, the threats, those are key factors that the jury has to consider. And when you talk about the guns and you talk about the violence, that goes to the means and the methods of the racketeering charge. So the prosecution has said that he is operating this criminal enterprise, that it was engaged in a pattern of illegal conduct, and that he would use violence and intimidation and his resources and his assistance and his power to silence people and to commit these crimes and to cover it up, which is, by the way, why I think it's so important that Don Richard talked about how there were assistants involved, their security, and saw what was going on but did nothing. So it seems that her testimony not only helped or tried to corroborate Cassandra Ventura's account, but also tied in and tried to prove some of the elements of racketeering. And by the way, talking about the drugs, that could go to the predicate crime. So remember, racketeering, the prosecution has to prove at least 2 underlying crimes. There's forced labor, there's drug trafficking, there's sex trafficking, obstruction, bribery, arson. You talk about the drugs, you could see how that might tie into that. Now, let's talk about the cross-examination, okay? I thought this was quite notable from what I was reading on the notes, but obviously the notes don't serve justice because you were in the courtroom to see all the cross-examination. So, A, who did the cross-examination of Dawn Richard, and what were the highlights of the cross-examination?
Well, a lot of us were initially thinking that it's going to be Mark Agnifilo doing the cross-examination because on Friday he was the one posing all the objections, but then he clarified with the judge earlier today outside of the presence of the jury that it wasn't going to be Mark Agnifilo doing the questioning. It's actually going to be Nicole Westmoreland, and she was somebody who would come onto the defense team a little later on, pretty close to trial essentially, but a lot of us may know her because she had previously represented one of the YSL defendants, and she had previously kind of worked with Brian Steele in that capacity, but this was the first time we actually saw her kind of doing her work inside this trial, inside this courtroom, and it was something to see because let me tell you something, Jesse, Nicole Westmoreland, she is a little tiny as far as just her height and her stature, but man, she is mighty, and she delivered a mighty cross-examination, let me tell you. So initially when they were first talking to her, and her being Dawn Richard, they were asking her about her lawsuit, of course. They were asking about whether or not she was aware of the motion to dismiss and whether or not that this was a pending matter that she had even known about. And Dawn said that she wasn't aware. She said she wasn't aware of a demand letter. She said, and this is something interesting, that she had filed her suit in September of 2024, which was just a few weeks from my understanding before Diddy was even arrested. Then she was asked how many times she had spoken to federal prosecutors. Dawn wasn't necessarily sure about the number. Nicole Westmoreland was like, did you speak with them about 8 times? Is that kind of fair for me to say? And she said she couldn't recall how many times she had spoken to federal prosecutors prior to her testimony. The defense asked her, and this was a very key point throughout her entire cross-examination, was have your answers changed over time? And then that's when Nicole Westmoreland was just kind of boom, 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 you change this, 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 and this. Because when they got to the egg skillet incident, Nicole Westmoreland asked on Friday, he testified that Cassie was cooling eggs. Diddy comes downstairs, he hits Cassie with the skillet, and then she drops into the fetal position. Dawn said that yes, she did say this, and she said, is this the first time you've spoken about this incident? And then she said she did speak about this in her civil lawsuit, and she spoke about it with prosecutors, and she's speaking about it during her testimony. And then they brought back the civil lawsuit to talk about it because she claimed in the lawsuit specifically that she didn't see the pan actually hit Cassie during this entire incident. And she, being Nicole Westmoreland, asked, are you aware on your behalf that you heard something but not saw something? Then there was an objection. That objection was sustained. Then Nicole Westmoreland asked her, you told the government that he attempted to hit her. You need to tell the truth, and that she was essentially giving 2 different stories. Then they brought back her interview in March of just this year, where she had told prosecutors that Diddy threw eggs at Cassie in this incident, and that the pan didn't hit Cassie during this incident. And then she was kind of asked, okay, did he throw the eggs? Did he throw the pan? Did he hit her? Did he attempt to hit her? Really, just what was it? And then Nicole Westmoreland was like, is it hard for you to keep your story straight? And then Dawn said, again, Dawn being kind of very soft-spoken when she's giving her testimony, says, I told it to the best of my recollection. Then she was asked again about the whole people go missing statement that she had made on Friday and even today, just as far as insinuating that people go missing just equates to a death threat. Nicole Westmoreland said this is not the first time that you explained that incident because you sat down with prosecutors, and then that's when she started going by all these different dates. She's in 2024, Diddy had told Dawn, and this was according to the statements that she had made to federal prosecutors, that this was a passionate argument, and that the defense says you didn't tell prosecutors at this time the whole where I'm from, people go missing part. Then in the March 18, 2025 interview, this is I guess her second interview with federal prosecutors, the defense says that you didn't tell prosecutors about the whole people go missing part. Dawn says, I'm answering the questions as best I can. Then in April, she was asked about the whole egg incident. and again with federal prosecutors. And again, these conversations that are being had with federal prosecutors aren't with Diddy present, aren't with Diddy's defense attorneys present. And so essentially it's just Don and other witnesses meeting with federal prosecutors, essentially going over their statements and what their testimony could look like, that type of thing. But during this April 17th meeting, which was just a few weeks before trial, they spoke about this egg incident again. And Don apparently, or reportedly, didn't bring up this people go missing claim, and she didn't bring this claim up again until May 10th, according to the defense. So the defense was really just kind of like, you need to be honest about this. They were really just saying, why do you have to be, why, if you're not scared that Diddy is there and you're not scared about Diddy's threats, then why weren't you just more forthcoming with prosecutors? Why didn't you bring up these types of incidents? And so they were really just kind of getting her to kind of admit or kind of trip her up there a little bit. Then she was asked about these other incidents, such as the dinner incident with celebrities there, and that's when you start to hear the names of Neo and Usher being present at this incident. And she was asked, why didn't she mention that other celebrities were there? She really only mentioned that Diddy's employees were there, and Dawn said that she wasn't asked what celebrities were there. And so then they bring her civil claim, or her civil lawsuit again, and talk about how there was this incident in the civil lawsuit where Diddy allegedly dragged Cassie out of a car, but to the federal government, she was saying that this didn't happen and that she was actually misquoted from her lawyer, which I thought was kind of, a little interesting there, because her lawyers are sitting inside the courtroom when this testimony is going on, and so she kind of essentially blamed that this was kind of a mischaracterization from her attorneys when they were drafting or writing up that lawsuit. Then she was asked about the Central Park Festival and the whole incident there where Diddy allegedly punched or I believe slapped Cassie in the face, and she was asked, was there a camera crew there, because they were reportedly filming something during this, and that Dawn was quick to say that this whole incident wouldn't be on video, and that they weren't actually filming in the bathroom, so whatever camera crew was present didn't capture just, I guess, the interaction between Cassie, Kalina, and Don Richard inside this bathroom. And so at one point I thought they were going to bring up the video inside the courtroom, but we didn't see any type of video, I guess, from this whole day or anything like that. And then she was asked, the defense said she was never alone with Diddy. There was always someone else there, like Kalina Harper. Kalina Harper, I think, kind of pretty interestingly, after after Don Richard's suit came out, Kalina Harper kind of made this statement, or she did an interview, just essentially kind of denying Don's claims that she didn't witness Diddy beat Cassie, and there's been kind of a lot of hiccups there. So I think as far as Kalina Harper is concerned, I think that it's possibly the defense might use Kalina Harper to kind of dispel what Don Richard had to say, maybe possibly as a defense witness, but I'm not 100% sure there, so I just definitely want to point that out there. Then Don was asked about the guns and whether or not Diddy's security team brought guns around because they're protecting this mega celebrity, and so of course his bodyguards are going to be carrying guns around. And she was asked, what instances did you see Diddy carry these guns? And she said that she saw one incident at the studio in New York, another incident here in New York, another incident at Diddy's house, also in New York, and Diddy said that Dawn said that she never saw Diddy wave a gun around or load it or put bullets in it, but she just reaffirmed that she did see Diddy with a gun. Then she was asked about drugs, again, kind of going piece by piece about kind of dispelling her testimony under direct there. But she was asked, was there ever a time that you pretended to do drugs? And Dawn said that she did. Then she had testified today she saw Diddy do cocaine, but didn't tell the prosecutors during her October interview. And during her October interview, according to the defense, she never said that she saw Diddy do any type of cocaine. And Dawn admitted during this time, because really Nicole Westmoreland was really just kind of like poking every hole that she really needed to poke here. Dawn admitted that over time her story has changed, because overall these events happened so long ago, and I think that kind of worked into her favor as far as why she wasn't recalling some of these. We're talking about 2008, 2009, it's 2025, and I think she was kind of, essentially saying that this was a long time ago, and so that's why kind of her memory's been a little back and forth there. She was asked about One Stop, and then when they were referring to One Stop, again, this being this alleged drug dealer that would bring Diddy drugs to the studio,
don't you successfully pass your Part 107?
She was asked who gave payment to One Stop, and she being Dawn told the government that she never saw anyone give payment to One Stop, and so there was kind of that, and so that was another moment where it's just like, oof. But as far as just the threats that Dawn says that she had went through, she said that she had felt scared just during her time working with Diddy, that she departed with Bad Boy in 2011, and the defense says that she being Dawn Richard, actually asked Diddy to come back because she wanted to work with him again. And the defense says that there was times that Dawn herself initiated communications with Diddy on several occasions, even though Dawn was allegedly scared of Diddy. And so then they were talking about Dawn Richard's career overall, just how they sold hundreds of thousands of records with Danity Kane, something I think was interesting that they had talked about, because given that Aubrey O'Day, one of her former bandmates, had talked about how much they all got for publishing, essentially that being $300, something that Dawn didn't talk about during her testimony today, but just something, for our viewers to kind of understand that the defense was trying to paint it as they sold hundreds of thousands of records, they got a claim, all this stuff, but then in the back of their mind, they really didn't get much money from their actual deal working with Diddy. But the defense talked about how Diddy didn't even want to sign Dawn Richard as a solo artist, but that Dawn continued to reach out to Diddy even again as late as 2020, 2021. The defense claims that Dawn was angry about the dismantling of the group. I think they were referring to either both Danity Kane and Dirty Money, or just Dirty Money itself, but Dawn essentially
Nah,
said that
she was pissed off
saddened
about
by the
Danny
situation.
Kane.
She was asked about Cassie's lawsuit as well too, and said that, did you file your lawsuit shortly after Cassie filed her suit? And she said yes, which I think was kind of a little misleading there, because it wasn't really directly after that Dawn Richard filed her lawsuit. It was almost a year after that she had filed her suit, but I think probably to the jury they might think, oh, Cassie filed her suit, Dawn filed her suit right after, and that essentially they just are after money from this this mogul who has a lot of money, and that Dawn said that she wanted to file her suit to get compensation for her work, essentially something different that she had told under direct, when she had said that she just wanted justice, but under cross-examination it was that she did want compensation for the work that she felt like she was owed while she was a recording artist for Sean Combs. And so I think under the redirect, the prosecution was really just kind of talking about the threats that Diddy allegedly made as far as keeping quiet and people going missing. They were talking about Dawn's work experience with Diddy, how it was a volatile work environment. She had said that essentially every meeting that she informs the government of Cassie's physical assault. So that was something that she didn't change throughout her testimony. That was something that kind of was a sticking point throughout all of her meetings with the government. Again, she was asked about the egg skillet incident, and then that kind of just ended the redirect. And then under the recross, it was kind of the same thing. Just you reached out to Diddy very recently. You were trying to kind of re-engage on making the band, this reboot that they were trying to do a few years ago. You were trying to get everything back together, and if you were so scared of Diddy, why would you try to get Dirty Money back together? And that was essentially because she was trying to help out Kalina Harper, but then Nicole Westmoreland was like, you know what all of that entails. If you were to get the group back together, you'd have to do tours, you'd have to be in hotels together, you have to do appearances together, interviews together, travel together. And Dawn essentially had to say, she was willing to do that, also while saying that she was feeling threatened and intimidated by Diddy. So the cross-examination was a little rough. It was a little hard to watch, but I think, to Nicole Westmoreland's point, she kind of did what she had to do, which was have a lot of people thinking, wow, if you said this under direct, but you said this under cross, really, what can I believe? And I think the defense did a really good job there, kind of getting to that point.
Yeah, she raised a number of questions about her credibility, about Dawn Richard's credibility. A witness who has inconsistent statements or says things allegedly at the first time or near a trial, juries sometimes don't look favorably upon that. The idea of a financial incentive and motivation, same thing we heard with Cassandra Ventura. Before we move on to the next witness, real quick, Elizabeth, I know it's impossible to know, but how is the jury reacting to the cross-examination of Dawn Richard? Were they attentive? Were they checked out? What could you tell us?
the jury was very attentive during this, because when I always say the word tennis match eyes, because that really what it is, where it's like Nicole Westmoreland asks a question, then they go to Don Richard. Don Richard answers the question, then they go to Nicole Westmoreland. I saw some of the jurors taking notes. I saw some of them looking at the exhibits. There weren't too many exhibits during this testimony. It wasn't like a whole bunch of text messages that we got during.
Did you guys know that America's #1 selling direct-to-garment printer is also the nation's most user-friendly direct-to-film?
Cassie's testimony, or even like Carrie Morgan's testimony that we'll get to in just a little bit. But as far as just Don Richard's testimony overall, I felt like the jury was maybe thrown for a loop a little bit once cross-examination happened, because I myself, if I was a juror on there, I'd be like, oh wow, so you said this here, but you didn't say this here, and yet I know you're trying to be honest and tell the truth, but your statements aren't making the most sense. And so I can only imagine what the jury was feeling, but as far as like being checked out, didn't see any of that.
Okay. Now we move on to Carrie Morgan. So